Hey guys, Zach Even-Esh here with the Iron Roots podcast, brought to you by Play. I'm standing inside the York Barbell Hall of Fame Museum. Look at this amazing photo. I've seen it before, but now we've got the history and we're bringing it to you here with Iron Roots, Tommy Kono, Dave Shepard, Bob Hoffman, John Grimmick, you name it. Through these next few episodes, we're going to be taking you through an amazing ride, an amazing tour of weightlifting and iron history. Now, if you're just listening on Apple Podcasts or wherever you could listen to our podcast, make sure you tune into the Play.pro app. That's where you could watch the videos. You're going to see photos and see inside of the York Barbell Hall of Fame some amazing photos while I interview somebody very, very special. Get a protein shake ready because we're going to crush it. This is Play's Iron Roots, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the strength legends, the training methods, and the stories around physical culture and iron history. I'm your host, Zach Even-Esh. Grab yourself a protein shake, chalk up, and prepare to travel back in time through some of the most awe-inspiring stories of iron history. It's go time.
On this episode of the Iron Roots podcast, Zach continues his conversation with Jan Dellinger at the York Barbell Museum.
Before he passed away, I was good friends with the Ultimate Warrior, and we always spoke about his training, and he said that was his heavy weightlifting was always pressing guys over his head, but he said he was also very fanatical about training. And you mentioning like this very hectic travel schedule, he mentioned like 200 plus days on the road. Yeah. He said he would wrestle in front of 50,000 people in Boston Arena, and he said, I didn't even have enough money to have a hotel. I'd sleep in my car and eat tuna out of the can. That's and I think, those guys, and who knows how Bruno Sammartino did it.
He made money. That he did. Of course, if you're the champion and you're
right,
you might get.
But I think they go through a pretty heavy-duty struggle leading up to that.
As the years pass and when they wrestle, they always start negotiating for less days on the road.
Sure.
But back to Ken. Ken had hurt his back training. He said they invited him to this first World's Strongest Man thing. He said, I started training. He said, I hadn't squatted heavy in a long time. He said, I worked up to 650. And he said, I started down, and he said, I feel something in my back, he said, that pretty much stopped that. He said, I wasn't at my best to compete in the strongman.
When he competed, I think it was when like the women were sitting on the machine, right?
Yeah.
They had the Zuver plates.
Right. But anyway, so what he did that day was he sat in folding chairs like we're sitting. He pushed it up to the dumbbell rack. He would take the 90s, he'd tip them up and sit in and press them like 10 reps. Put them down, get up, he'd walk around, he's stiff, you could tell. And he did a few sets of that, and then he got Smitty to give him a rub down. You should, my God, a man of that mass, and move out. Smitty had sweat going. Smitty's hands were like this. He couldn't close them. He came up to punch out, and he could barely get his time card and hold it. His hands were just like that. And sweat, my God. Anyway, Ken told Turpak, he said, he was explaining the wrestling thing to us.
Right.
He said, look, my back's a little bummed up. He said, I'm going to wrestle Gorilla Monsoon right before the break.
I remember Gorilla Monsoon.
And he said...
such a great name.
He said, basically, I think Turpak said, how are you going to wrestle with your back? He said, well, I'm just going to walk around the ring, taunt the fans. I'm going to roll in to stop, count me out, and then I'm going to roll out, taunt the fans. I'm going to keep that up for about 8 minutes. He said, then I'm finally going to get in, lock up with Monsoon, and I'll foul him once. And then he said, we'll lock up again. I'll conk him with the ring bell, hop out, I'll get DQ'd, I'm going to run to the locker room. He said, now, when everybody's going to the can, he said, you start toward our dressing room door. He said, I'm going to give it a couple of minutes, and he said, I'm going to stick my head out and have him come in. Now, you're listening to this at 3 in the afternoon thinking, you get paid for this? And he got paid pretty well. And you're thinking, well, we're talking about winging it. This is like hours in advance. Well, darn if that isn't exactly what happened. And when you see it unfolding, it's like, wow, there is an art to that.
There's an art to that.
There's an art to that. Anyway, so we went, he conks Monsoon with a ring bell, and everybody's going to the can, and we go over toward the door, and he sticks his head out. We walk through the door, and I remember by this time there sits Monsoon with Baron Miguel Cicluna, looking at Cicluna's kids, a list of pictures like this, out of his wallet. And I remember him saying to Cicluna, I remember when that one was this tall. And over in the sink area was Nikolai Volkov.
Yes.
Who worked for Baltimore Gas and Electric for years, singing Old Man River while he was shaving. And there was other guys sitting in there. I mean, I remember we encountered a Samoan, I forget the man's name, who was tattooed, like fishnet tattoo from here all the way down to his ankles. Phil Redmond and I went, we talked to him for a while. That's kind of memorable. I had a friend of mine named Walt Evans who became the strength coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1984.
Oh, that was like their era, right? Was that their era of just dominating?
They were still hanging close to that era, yeah. It was 83 or 84, I forget which. Anyway, Walt invited me out. Oh, Terry Bradshaw. He shared a room with Terry Bradshaw. Walt called me up and said, why don't you come out and spend a week? I said, where am I going to stay? The Rolling Rock Beer Plant? He said, no, you can room with me. Now, Terry Bradshaw, I said, Bradshaw rooms with you. Yeah, he said, but he's going to retire. Bradshaw had an elbow operation the winter before. And I said this to Walt. I said, you got Bradshaw. How am I going to room with you? He said, he's going to retire. I said, well, that's not what I read in the paper. Darn it. A week went by. Terry Bradshaw announced his retirement. I called back Walt and said, well, can I still come out? Yeah, you can room with me. So I spent a week with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ate at St. Vincent's College, right in the dorm, ate with them, slept with them, watched them.
How were those guys training at that time? What year was that? 83. Okay. So this was during their summer camp?
Yeah, and when they're having two-a-days.
Okay. Were they lifting at that time?
Yeah, but it was really heavily monitored lifting.
Who monitored their strength? Okay.
They had the running backs train in the morning. What was it? The quarterback, the running backs, and the wide receivers trained in the morning. And I think the linemen trained in the afternoon.
Skill guys in the morning, big guys later.
I believe. Walt would put papers down on the floor at stations like, all right, if he wanted you to do deadlifts.
Right.
Okay, and it was lighter weights for the smaller guys. But let's say he would have you do, it was very, because they were doing two-a-days and it was 90s. They were carting guys off to St. Vincent's hospitals, giving them IVs by the Zamboni.
Now they have it right on the sideline.
He put papers down like he wanted you to deadlift.
Yep.
185 for 3, 225 for 3, 275 for 3, and that was it for that station.
Oh, so he kind of, he didn't let them go nuts?
No. The only guy who did was Mike Webster.
I was just going to ask you about Mike Webster.
Mike came in after the second practice. He came in about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The second practice was over. They practiced from 3 to 5, right in the heat of the day. And they did all these one-on-one drills. I mean, it wasn't like they were, you were fighting, you were hand-fighting guys, for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. Chuck Noll was not giving anybody a break. Anyway, but he came in, and he was one of the stronger guys in the team, as was John Kolb, who by that point had retired. John competed in the first World's Strongest Man contest.
John Kolb.
Kolb, K-O-L-B.
Okay.
Who was left tackle. He's the one that protected Bradshaw's blind side. Anyway, but Webby's still playing, and he comes in, and he knew me a little. He knew I knew Kolb a little bit, and we talked a little bit. So I came in just to stretch out my hamstrings, and Walt had told me Webster he said the king of overtraining, just the absolute king of overtraining. Well, if you come in to stretch out your hamstrings, you wouldn't necessarily squat. You wouldn't squat that heavy. Well, he started at 135, and then he did 185, and 225, and 275. And
quarters and plates.
Right, yeah. He got up there about 365, 375, something like that, for like mostly sets of 8, 10 reps. This was after the two-a-days. And in the heat. And he was getting to be that elder statesman for a football player.
I had heard when he got older, he switched from 1 to 5 reps to doing those 8 to 10s.
Well, that's what I saw him do.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, he just overtrained it. Walt said if he literally cut his routine in half, he'd still be overtrained.
He probably just more needed it psychologically.
So, among other things, like I said, going to being in the professional wrestling locker room,
Right.
spending a week with the Pittsburgh Steelers, going to the first World's Strongest Man contest, which was held at Great Gorge Resort. We supplied equipment.
Great Gorge is,
North Jersey, Pocono Mountains of Jersey.
yeah, Great Gorge used to be called Vernon Valley. Now it's it's the ski place, right?
Well, it was a family place then. It was a Playboy resort at the time. Anyway, so like I said, went there, got to meet Kono, got to know him a little bit, got to see other guys, you know, I knew Bill Kazmaier a little bit, you got to see him again there, and a few other people, got to know more people, you know, that kind of, this is kind of where my, you know, Forrest Gump tour through the Iron Games sort of was in the early stages of it.
Wow, amazing. A lot of history here.
Yeah, I mean, I had some other things too I liked, but those would be three of them.
I bet working with Grimmick must have been amazing.
Yeah. And you know, he had to drag stuff out of me. He would tell you a story. He loved to reminisce. Once he got comfortable with you, and remember, it was like 42 years difference in our ages.
Right.
And he was who he was. I was on his turf. Right. Once he got comfortable with me, would just reminisce about Steve Reeves, George Eiferman. You know, this guy, that guy, you know.
What's a favorite story he shared with you? Do you recall?
Oh, well, one of them. All right, I'll give you a Steve Reeves story.
Sure.
Reeves told him that he wanted, and this is the Atlantic City Boardwalk was big at the time. Reeves wanted to reverse train two big like Dobermans and walk them down the promenade there.
What do you mean reverse train?
Well, when you're hollering, whoa, what they're surging.
Oh, right.
So you like,
I have a Doberman. So that's great.
you know, you train him by say stop. You want him to stop.
Yep.
No, he was gonna the other way. I was gonna train him that I'm not stop. Whoa, halt. You know, they're surging. They aren't
Yes.
surging until I'm doing
Okay.
it. She said my arms will look gigantic. You know, as I'm pulling these
Oh, that makes sense. That's great.
people ooh and ah. He also told me, he said Reeves came here, I think, to train for the 1947 Mr. Universe, so he was a resident of New York for a while. He said Stanko and I would take him out, we'd walk around town, and he said we started thinking he might have needed glasses. He said whenever we went to a restaurant, he's looking at the menu, and it was one of these, what are you guys going to have?
Right.
He said we went to an ice cream place one time, we got some ice cream, and they used to have a little bit of distance. There was the counter, and then they had the actual case that they were in, and then they had it flavors up in the wall. Yeah, he's looking. He's starting to squint. And so, what are you guys going to have? You know,
What did you guys have? Milkshakes or ice cream?
Stanko's big picture. Stanko liked ice cream and a lot of.
That's great.
Thank you for supporting the Iron Roots podcast brought to you by Play. To see this episode and all the other educational resources brought to you by Play, go to play.pro, Plae.pro. You're going to love it, and we'll see you next time.